The Miller family vanished without a trace, gone with their yellow green car during a cross-country road trip. Police scoured every inch of the valley but found nothing. Then one day, a drone pilot named Alex captured footage of the missing car, buried deep in a shadowed ravine. Inside were not only the skeletal remains but a strange, obsidian object humming with a low, unnatural sound. A sound that might open a door to something humanity was never meant to see. In 1998, the Miller family, consisting of Peter, Sarah, and their two teenage daughters, Emily and Jessica, embarked on a cross-country road trip in their distinctive yellow-green car. Their journey led them to a place called Devil's Peak Valley. It was there that they vanished without a trace. Police launched an extensive search that lasted for weeks, but they found no signs of the car or any of the family members. As time passed with no new leads, the case was eventually abandoned, becoming a haunting cold case. 20 years later, a man named Alex, a drone enthusiast, was flying his drone over the rugged landscape of Devil's Peak Valley, the very place where the Miller family had disappeared. As his drone soared over a dense forest, he noticed something strange. A pile of what looked like crushed metal with a faded yellow-green hue. He guided his drone to fly lower, capturing a clearer image. Alex saw a yellow-green car, completely mangled and covered by trees and debris. He saw 4 small sets of bones and skulls inside the car. He immediately recognized it as the Miller family's vehicle and called the police. The mystery that had remained unsolved for 2 decades was finally beginning to unravel. Police concluded that the Miller family's car had plunged into a deep ravine. Due to its hidden location and the thick foliage, the vehicle had been impossible to spot during the initial search. With this discovery, the Miller family's final resting place was finally found. The news captivated thousands as the police announced the breakthrough. This story served as a powerful inspiration for journalists and writers. It highlighted the crucial role that drone technology can play in solving long-standing mysteries. As news of the Miller family's discovery spread, the local community, and indeed the entire country, was captivated by the chilling details. Alex, the drone pilot, became an overnight sensation, hailed as an accidental hero. Yet for him, the experience was more profound. The eerie footage of the mangled car and the bones within haunted his thoughts, pushing him to learn more about the family whose fate he had uncovered. He began researching the Miller family, poring through old news articles and online forums dedicated to the cold case. He learned about Peter, a history teacher, and Sarah, a talented artist. Emily was a promising student, and Jessica, the younger sister, was known for her vibrant personality. They were a normal, happy family, whose lives were tragically cut short. One evening, while sifting through a dusty archive of old local newspapers, Alex found a small, overlooked article from a month before the Millers' disappearance. The headline read, "Local man warns of unusual activity on Devil's Peak." The article detailed a man named Silas, a recluse who lived in a cabin near the mountain, who had reported hearing strange noises and seeing what he described as bright lights in the sky over the valley. At the time, his claims were dismissed as the ramblings of an eccentric old man. This detail piqued Alex's curiosity. Could there be more to the Miller family's disappearance than just a tragic car accident? The police report, based on the drone footage and subsequent ground investigation, concluded that the car had veered off a winding road and plunged into the ravine. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He decided to return to Devil's Peak, this time not with a drone, but with a backpack and a flashlight. He wanted to retrace the Miller family's final known route and, if possible, find Silas's cabin. He felt an undeniable pull, a need to honor the memory of the family by uncovering every last detail of what had happened to them. As he drove towards the mountain, a sense of unease settled over him. The sun began to set, casting long, menacing shadows across the winding road. He couldn't help but wonder if he was heading down a rabbit hole of his own, or if he was on the verge of uncovering a truth far more sinister than a simple car accident. He was about to find out. The next episode is called The Man on the Mountain. The sun was a fiery red orb sinking below the horizon as Alex's car rattled along the deserted road, leading up to Devil's Peak. The air grew colder, and a thick fog began to roll in, obscuring the familiar landscape. He pulled over at the mouth of a barely visible hiking trail, grabbed his backpack, and started his ascent. The unusual activity reported by Silas echoed in his mind. He was no detective, just a curious drone pilot. but he couldn't shake the feeling that Silas held a piece of the puzzle. The official police report felt too clean, too simple. A family road trip, a wrong turn, a tragic accident. It didn't account for the months of searching that turned up nothing, or for the eerie sense of foreboding the mountain seemed to exude. After a grueling hour of hiking, guided only by the dim beam of his flashlight, he spotted a faint glow in the distance. It was a single lantern hanging from the porch of a small, rustic cabin. Alex approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He knocked on the weathered wooden door. The door creaked open, revealing a man with a long, gray beard and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. It was Silas. He regarded Alex with a suspicious stare. "You're not from around here," he stated, his voice a low growl. Alex explained who he was and why he was there, mentioning the old newspaper article and the Miller family. Silas's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of recognition in them. He invited Alex inside, offering him a cup of hot herbal tea. "They didn't believe me, you know," Silas said, stirring his tea with a twig. "The police. They thought I was crazy, but I know what I saw." Silas then recounted a story far stranger than a simple car crash. He spoke of a night filled with strange, humming sounds and brilliant lights descending from the sky over the valley. He had watched in awe, and then in fear, as the lights hovered over the very spot where Alex's drone had found the car. He described seeing something that looked like a big bug with many legs. And then, nothing. Silence. The humming stopped. The lights vanished, and the only sound was the wind. He hadn't mentioned this detail to the police, fearing they would institutionalize him. He felt guilty for not speaking up sooner, for letting the family's disappearance be labeled a simple accident. As Alex listened, a new, more unsettling theory began to form in his mind. Could the Miller family have been the victims of something? Not of this world. Silas's story was incredible, but his genuine fear and the conviction in his voice made it hard to dismiss. The humming, the lights, the big bug, it all sounded like something out of a science fiction movie. But what if it wasn't? As the night wore on, Alex felt a growing sense of dread. The search for answers had taken a turn he never could have anticipated. The next episode is called The Humming and the Light. The Humming and the Light. Alex left Silas's cabin with a mind reeling from the old man's bizarre tale. The simple car accident theory was shattered, replaced by a much more unsettling possibility. He drove home in a daze, the image of the mangled car and the sound of Silas's trembling voice replaying in his head. The humming, the lights, the big bug. It all felt too fantastical. Yet it explained the unexplainable. Why no one found the car for 20 years? Could something have deliberately hidden it? Determined to find some tangible proof, Alex decided to revisit the original drone footage he had taken. He spent hours meticulously examining every frame of the video, zooming in on the crushed car and the surrounding area. He was looking for anything out of the ordinary, a clue that might corroborate Silas's story. Just as he was about to give up, something caught his eye. In a brief, blurry moment, as the drone's camera panned across the wreckage, he noticed a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer on the surface of the car's twisted metal. It was gone in an instant, but he was sure he had seen it. He slowed the video down, frame by frame, until he found the moment again. It wasn't a reflection of the sun, as it was a cloudy day. It looked more like a distortion, a ripple in the air itself, fading away into nothing. He also noticed a strange, almost musical sound embedded in the audio of the drone's flight, a low-frequency hum that was barely audible above the whirring of the propellers. He isolated the sound and amplified it. The humming grew louder, a deep, resonant tone that sent a shiver down his spine. It sounded like nothing he had ever heard before. Could this be the same humming Silas had described? A new theory began to take shape. What if the Miller family's car didn't just fall into the ravine, but was somehow lifted or moved by an unknown force? What if the shimmering distortion was a remnant of some kind of energy field? The police had found no skid marks, no broken guardrail, nothing to indicate a conventional accident. They assumed the car had simply veered off the road at an unmarked turn. But what if it hadn't? Alex knew he couldn't go to the police with this. They would think he was as crazy as they thought Silas was. He decided he had to investigate further on his own. The next day, he drove back to Devil's Peak, this time armed with not just his drone, but with specialized equipment. A high-powered magnetometer to detect magnetic fields and a Geiger counter to measure radiation. He hiked to the exact spot where the car was found, a location now cordoned off by police tape. He deployed his drone and began to fly it in a grid pattern over the ravine, monitoring the readings from his sensors. For the first few passes, nothing. Just the normal magnetic fields and background radiation of the Earth. But then, as the drone passed directly over the wreckage, a loud, piercing alarm sounded from the magnetometer. The needle spiked, indicating an extremely strong and localized magnetic field. The Geiger counter also registered a slight but noticeable increase in radiation. Alex's hands trembled as he stared at the readings. It was impossible. Something down in that ravine was emitting a powerful magnetic field and a low level of radiation. He landed the drone and, despite the police tape, began to carefully climb down into the ravine. He had to see it for himself. He had to know what was down there with the Miller family's car. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs as he descended into the ravine. The air grew colder and stiller with every step, and the sounds of the world above seemed to fade away. He finally reached the bottom. A claustrophobic space choked with tangled branches and moss-covered rocks. The wreckage of the Miller family's car lay before him, a ghostly monument to a 2-decade-old tragedy. He held his magnetometer in a trembling hand, its needle still quivering wildly. He ran the device slowly over the surface of the car. The strongest magnetic field was emanating from the passenger side, specifically from the rear door. With his gloved hand, he carefully pried open the door, which was already warped and bent from the impact. Inside, the car was a scene of decay and ruin, but lodged between the back seat and the car door, he found something that didn't belong. It was a small, smooth, metallic object about the size of a fist. It was a dark obsidian color, with no seams or markings. It was cold to the touch and unnaturally heavy. As soon as he touched it, the humming sound he had isolated from his drone footage filled the air, resonating not just in his ears, but in his very bones. The Geiger counter he had placed on the ground began to click furiously. Overwhelmed, Alex stumbled backward, dropping the strange object. The humming and the clicking immediately stopped. He stared at the object, a newfound fear gripping him. It wasn't a piece of the car, nor was it a natural rock. It was something else, something alien. He picked it up again, and the humming and the clicking returned. As he held it, he felt a strange pressure building in his head, a dizzying sense of disorientation. He saw a flash of an image in his mind's eye, a blurry, distorted view of a family, laughing, driving down a road, and then a sudden, blinding light. The image was gone as quickly as it appeared, but it felt unmistakably like a memory from the Miller's point of view. Alex realized with a jolt that this object was not just a piece of strange technology, it was a recorder, or perhaps even a power source, of whatever had caused the Miller family to vanish. The humming wasn't just a sound. It was an energy field, a force that had likely caused the car to veer off the road and, for whatever reason, had shielded the wreckage from discovery for 20 years. Silas's story, while fantastic, was the only one that made sense now. The big bug might have been some kind of advanced craft, and the lights were its energy source. He carefully wrapped the object in a thick cloth and secured it in his backpack. He knew he was in possession of something that could change everything we know about the world. And he knew he had to be careful. He could not go to the authorities. They would take it, and the truth would likely be buried forever. He began the long, arduous climb out of the ravine, the heavy, humming object in his backpack feeling like a ticking time bomb. The mystery was no longer a cold case. It was an active investigation, and Alex was no longer just a drone pilot. He was a witness to an event that history had forgotten, and he was holding the key to a truth that was both terrifying and unbelievable. The strange object safely tucked away in his backpack, Alex made his way down the mountain, the weight on his back feeling heavier with every step. The humming, though muffled by the cloth, was a constant, unsettling presence. He felt a newfound sense of purpose, a responsibility to the Miller family to see this through, no matter how strange or dangerous it became. He spent the next few days in his apartment, trying to make sense of the artifact. He ran every test he could think of, but the object defied all conventional science. It didn't react to magnets, electricity, or heat in any predictable way. Its density was off the charts, and it seemed to absorb all light, making it difficult to photograph. But the strangest thing was the intermittent flashes of images he would receive whenever he held it for an extended period. Fleeting glimpses of starry skies, strange constellations, and a deep, pulsing nebula of a purple hue. He realized the object wasn't a recorder in the traditional sense, but a kind of communication device, or maybe even a key. It was trying to show him something. The humming wasn't just an energy field. It was a signal, a beacon. The Miller family's car hadn't just crashed. It had been an event, a point of contact. The question was, with whom? Alex knew he couldn't keep this to himself any longer. He needed to find someone who would believe him. Someone with the resources and knowledge to help him understand what he had found. He thought of Silas, the old man on the mountain. But he was a witness, not a scientist. Then he remembered a name from his research on the cold case. Dr. Aris Thorne. Thorne was a fringe academic, a professor of astrophysics who had written a few controversial papers on the possibility of non-human intelligence and had been ridiculed for his theories. He had even been one of the few who had publicly questioned the official police report on the Miller family disappearance, suggesting there were unusual variables that had not been accounted for. He was the perfect person to contact. Alex found an old, outdated email address for Dr. Thorne online and sent him a message. He didn't reveal everything, only that he was the drone pilot who had found the Miller family's car, and that he believed he had found something that would change everything about the case. He attached the isolated audio file of the humming and a blurry photo of the obsidian object. He waited, but there was no response. A few days later, he tried again, this time with a more urgent tone. Still nothing. Alex's paranoia began to grow. Was his message intercepted? Was Dr. Thorne being watched? Just as he was about to give up hope, his doorbell rang. It was late, and he wasn't expecting anyone. He cautiously peered through the peephole and saw a tall, elderly man with a kind but weary face. He had a briefcase in his hand. Alex slowly opened the door. "Can I help you?" he asked, his heart pounding. "My name is Aris Thorne," the man said, his voice soft and raspy. "I got your messages. I think we need to talk." He looked at Alex's backpack, which was resting on a chair in the living room, and the humming, though barely perceptible to Alex, seemed to be calling to him. Dr. Thorne's eyes widened. "Is that what I think it is?" Alex knew then that he had found his confidant, his collaborator. He had found someone who could help him unlock the secrets of the object. He was no longer just a witness. He was now a messenger, tasked with delivering a truth that the world was not ready to hear. Alex led Dr. Thorne into his small living room, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The moment the briefcase was set on the table, Thorne's gaze was fixed on Alex's backpack, as where the humming obsidian object lay hidden. There was a mix of awe and trepidation in his eyes, as if he were seeing a ghost from a long-lost dream. "I've been waiting for something like this my entire life," Thorne said, his voice barely a whisper. "You have no idea." Alex carefully unzipped his backpack and unwrapped the object, the humming growing in intensity. Dr. Thorne took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for a small, metallic device in his briefcase. He pointed it at the object, and a small screen on the device flickered to life, displaying a complex series of data and strange geometric patterns. "Incredible," Thorne murmured, his fingers dancing over the device's keyboard. "The energy signature. It's a perfect match. I've been detecting it for years. A faint signal emanating from this area, but it was always too weak and too random to pinpoint. I called it the resonance." Alex was stunned. "You mean you've known about this all along?" "Not known," Thorne corrected. "Hypothesized. I believed it was a form of communication, a beacon. I wrote papers about it, but they were dismissed as the ravings of a crackpot." He paused, his eyes welling up with emotion. "But you found the source." Dr. Thorne then revealed the full extent of his decades-long research. He had been tracking similar, though much weaker, signals from all over the globe, all of them linked to unexplained disappearances and strange phenomena. He believed these objects were a form of universal translator, a device that could interface with a species' consciousness, sharing information and experiences. "The flashes you're seeing," Thorne explained, "they're not just memories. They're what the Miller family experienced. This object didn't cause their death. It preserved them. It's a form of transport." Alex's blood ran cold. "Transport? What do you mean?" Thorne took a deep breath. "I believe the Miller family's consciousness. Their very essence was transferred. They weren't killed in a car crash. They were taken. The car was just a leftover shell. And the object you found is a key. A messenger, as you called it, to the place they went." Thorne then showed Alex what he had in his briefcase. A larger, more complex version of the same technology, a device he had been building for years, based on the faint signals he had been tracking. He called it the conduit. This, he said, gesturing to the device, is a receiver. If we place your object in the center of it and provide the right energy, we might be able to establish a full connection. We might be able to communicate with them, to find out where they are. Alex's mind reeled with the implications. The Miller family wasn't dead. They were somewhere else, a place beyond their comprehension, and he had the key to find them. But what would happen if they turned it on? What if the communication was not what they expected? What if it was a trap? There's a great risk, Thorne warned, sensing Alex's apprehension. We don't know what will happen. This could open a door that we can't close. Despite the danger, Alex knew he had to do it. He had a responsibility to the Miller family. To bring them back, or at least to tell the world their story. He looked at Thorne, a new kind of determination in his eyes. Let's do it, Alex said, his voice firm. Let's turn it on. Alex led Dr. Thorne into his small living room, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The moment the briefcase was set on the table, Thorne's gaze was fixed on Alex's backpack. Where the humming, obsidian object lay hidden, there was a mix of awe and trepidation in his eyes, as if he were seeing a ghost from a long-lost dream. I've been waiting for something like this my entire life, Thorne said, his voice barely a whisper. You have no idea. Alex carefully unzipped his backpack and unwrapped the object, the humming growing in intensity. Dr. Thorne took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for a small, metallic device in his briefcase. He pointed it at the object, and a small screen on the device flickered to life, displaying a complex series of data and strange geometric patterns. Incredible, Thorne murmured, his fingers dancing over the device's keyboard. The energy signature? It's a perfect match. I've been detecting it for years. A faint signal emanating from this area, but it was always too weak and too random to pinpoint. I called it the resonance. Alex was stunned. You mean you've known about this all along? Not known, Thorne corrected. Hypothesized. I believed it was a form of communication, a beacon. I wrote papers about it, but they were dismissed as the ravings of a crackpot. He paused, his eyes welling up with emotion. But you found the source. Dr. Thorne then revealed the full extent of his decades-long research. He had been tracking similar, though much weaker, signals from all over the globe, all of them linked to unexplained disappearances and strange phenomena. He believed these objects were a form of universal translator, a device that could interface with a species' consciousness, sharing information and experiences. The flashes you're seeing, Thorne explained, they're not just memories. They're what the Miller family experienced. This object didn't cause their death. It preserved them. It's a form of transport. Alex's blood ran cold. Transport? What do you mean? Thorne took a deep breath. I believe the Miller family's consciousness, their very essence was transferred. They weren't killed in a car crash. They were taken. The car was just a leftover shell. And the object you found is a key. A messenger, as you called it, to the place they went. Thorne then showed Alex what he had in his briefcase. A larger, more complex version of the same technology. A device he had been building for years, based on the faint signals he had been tracking. He called it the conduit. This, he said, gesturing to the device, is a receiver. If we place your object in the center of it, and provide the right energy, we might be able to establish a full connection. We might be able to communicate with them, to find out where they are. Alex's mind reeled with the implications. The Miller family wasn't dead. They were somewhere else, a place beyond their comprehension. And he had the key to find them. But what would happen if they turned it on? What if the communication was not what they expected? What if it was a trap? There's a great risk, Thorne warned, sensing Alex's apprehension. We don't know what will happen. This could open a door that we can't close. Despite the danger, Alex knew he had to do it. He had a responsibility to the Miller family. To bring them back, or at least to tell the world their story. He looked at Thorne, a new kind of determination in his eyes. Let's do it, Alex said, his voice firm. Let's turn it on. Silence hung heavy in the room, broken only by the low hum of the conduit and the frantic click of Dr. Thorne's instruments. The shimmering portal swirled before them, a chaotic kaleidoscope of purple nebulae and crystalline landscapes. On one side, a voice, ancient and sorrowful, echoed in their minds, close the door. On the other, the translucent, spectral form of Emily Miller shook her head, a silent, desperate plea etched onto her glowing features. It's a trap, Alex, Thorne said, his voice trembling. He pointed at the conduit's screen, where a new series of complex, unsettling readings were flashing. The energy signature of that voice. It's parasitic. It's trying to latch onto the conduit. We need to shut it down now before it gets in. But Alex couldn't tear his eyes away from Emily. Look at her, Dr. Thorne. She's scared. The voice is warning us, but she's begging us not to listen. We can't just abandon her. As if in response, Emily's glowing form raised her hand toward them. A wave of light emanated from her palm, not a sound, but a series of images that flashed directly into their minds. Alex saw fragmented scenes, a picnic in a sun-drenched field, the interior of their old car, and then a blinding flash of light. Following the light, there were glimpses of a vast, empty void, and then the purple-hued world they were now seeing. But at the end of the sequence, Emily projected an image that was horrifyingly clear. A dark, shadowy creature with multiple appendages, lurking in the crystalline forests of the other world. It was the big bug that Silas had described, and it was watching them. Thorne saw the image too, and his scientific caution was momentarily overshadowed by a wave of protective fury. They're not just taken, he said, his voice low with rage. They're being held. That voice? It's a jailer. She's showing us the truth, Alex said, his conviction solidifying. The voice isn't trying to protect us. It's trying to stop us from helping them. The danger is on that side, but the voice is on this side, using the conduit to communicate. Alex stepped forward, reaching for the shimmering portal. Thorne grabbed his arm. Alex, no! The conduit isn't a simple doorway. It's a bridge between dimensions. If that creature finds a way through, if it uses this bridge, it could be catastrophic. I have to try, Alex insisted, his voice unwavering. We found them. We have to finish this. With a firm resolve, he shook Thorne's hand away and, instead of shutting down the conduit, he pressed a sequence of buttons on Thorne's control panel. The conduit's hum intensified, and the shimmering portal grew in size, its colors deepening. Emily's form became more solid, more human, her face filled with a desperate gratitude. But then, the disembodied voice in their minds returned, no longer sorrowful, but filled with a chilling, incandescent rage. Fool, you have opened the gate! Now you will learn why it was meant to be closed. As the voice's wrathful echo faded, the shadowy creature Emily had shown them began to move. It detached itself from the forest, its form becoming clearer and more menacing with every passing second. It was not just a creature, it was a hunter, and it was now aware of the open portal. It began to move toward the shimmering gateway, its many limbs scuttling over the ground. The conduit, which had been a bridge of light, was now a two-way street. Alex and Thorne had made their choice. They had listened to Emily, but in doing so, they had also alerted the very threat she was warning them about. They were no longer just observers of a cold case. They were now active participants in an interdimensional conflict. And the hunter was on its way. The creature from the other side of the portal was no longer a shadow. As it scuttled towards the shimmering gateway, its form solidified into a horrifying reality. It was insectoid, with a glistening, obsidian carapace and 6 spindly legs that moved with impossible speed. Its head was a multifaceted lens of black crystal, and from its many limbs, tendrils of black smoke seemed to writhe and coil. Reaching for the open portal, the air in the apartment grew heavy and cold, a deep dread radiating from the conduit. We have to close it, Thorne yelled, his voice strained. He slammed his fist on the control panel, but the buttons no longer responded. The voice was a warning, not a jailer. It was a guardian. That creature is using the conduit as an anchor to this dimension. The conduit, now acting as a two-way bridge, was a conduit for a terrifying force. The creature's obsidian form was already partially through the shimmering veil, its crystal head poking into Alex's living room. A chilling telepathic scream of pure malice echoed in their minds, a sound that threatened to shatter their sanity. It's too late to just shut it down, Thorne shouted over the noise. The conduit's energy is too unstable. It's a feedback loop. We have to overload it. The only way to stop it is to destroy it. He frantically worked on the panel, his aged hands moving with a speed Alex didn't know he possessed. I can reverse the polarity and create a surge. But I need you to get out of here, Alex. Take the object. It's the key. You have to preserve the truth. Alex's eyes darted between the terrifying creature forcing its way through the portal and the shimmering, spectral form of Emily Miller, who was now screaming silently, a desperate warning in her eyes. The choice he had made, driven by a desire to help, had unleashed a new, unforeseen horror. "I'm not leaving you," Alex shouted, grabbing a fire extinguisher and aiming it at the conduit. A useless gesture in the face of interdimensional physics. "There's no time!" "Get out!" Thorn pushed him back with a surprising force. "I dedicated my life to this." "Let me finish it. Go." "Live to tell the story." With a final terrible roar, the creature's upper body ripped through the shimmering veil, its insectoid mandibles snapping at the air. Alex, with a profound sense of horror and guilt, saw that it was dragging the translucent form of Emily Miller with it, as if she were a tether. Her face, a mask of pure terror, was the last thing he saw. "Go now!" Thorn's voice was a final command. Alex, with a heavy heart and a mind reeling with pain, grabbed his backpack with the obsidian object. He turned and ran for the door, the cacophony behind him growing louder and more chaotic. The last thing he heard was Thorn's final shout of defiance as he slammed his fist down on the now glowing red button. A blinding flash of white light erupted from the apartment behind him, a thunderous roar shaking the entire building to its foundations. Alex was thrown off his feet, his ears ringing as he hit the concrete hallway. When he finally opened his eyes, the door to his apartment was a smoldering, twisted wreck. The humming was gone. The conduit was gone. The creature was gone. Dr. Thorn was gone. Days later, the official story was a gas explosion, a tragic accident. The police found no sign of Thorn or the strange device, only the inexplicable localized destruction. Alex, now haunted by the memories of what he had seen, and the sacrifice that had been made, was left with only one remaining piece of evidence: the small, humming obsidian object in his backpack. The Miller family was not dead. They were just somewhere else, a place guarded by a hunter. And Alex was the only one who knew the truth. He was a messenger with no one left to send the message to. He was a keeper of a secret so profound, so terrifying, that it would change the way he saw the world forever. The story of the Miller family was over, but Alex's new solitary journey had only just begun.